am I even doing anymore? Reading scripts and critiques of films no one even cares about? Christ, I can't even find most of them. Half the companies don't even distribute to Region 2. I've been at this for like 2 years and work 8 hours a day, and how many subs do I have? Like 120? 25?
Like, why do I bother? Who would miss me if I left? Or, better yet, what would I miss if I just decided to up and quit right now? Is this bit still funny if I don't spray chocolate milk all over my very expensive Wacom? Probably not. And, at the risk of setting a dangerous precedent, February 15th I logged on to YouTube and found I had 1 more subscriber than the day before. Now, generally, I don't count subscribers. I'm happy if anyone enjoys my content, but this one was a bit different. This was a name that I hadn't seen since I scrapped my first YouTube channel. Blood runs clear. I don't expect you to know who that is. Like I said, it's been years since I heard the name. But he's an old-timer of the highest caliber. He started his channel in 2007. He's someone that I grew up watching and played a big part in my creative development. He helped me realize that entertainment could be more than what you're presented with, and was a major inspiration for my own fan edits back in the day. Now, I'm not a snob. And I don't want to invite a caste system of most treasured subscribers. If anyone enjoys what I do, then that is enough for me. But if the genius that thought of casting Vin Diesel as Shadow the Hedgehog notices me,
I'm Hell's messenger. I don't rile people. I kill them.
then I feel like I have achieved something. So thank you very much, genuinely made my week. Now, what am I doing? Oh, movie.
There is something unsettling about children. A dark side to their innocence you don't notice until it's too late. A naivete between right from wrong that bring them closer to savage than civilized. Look them in the eye, and are you sure what stares back is something human? The Poes, outwardly, are the standard American upper-middle-class family. The father, a larger-than-life priest that isn't too proud to have fun and laugh. The mother, a successful psychologist, and between them both, 2 beautiful children. That doesn't laugh, that doesn't smile, that doesn't speak, that stares at them from afar, that plays dangerous games that only seem to grow more twisted.
This is one of those movies that should come with a don't watch if you're pregnant caution, but I keep seeing YouTubers referring to kids as crotch goblins, so what are the odds anyone who wants kids is in my audience?
I start the movie and immediately regret eating breakfast while watching it.
If I'd known I would have started today by staring at roadkill, I would have gone to Subway.
And yeah, I couldn't tell you for sure if that's a real animal caucus or not. It was very difficult to find any trivia about this movie, but I couldn't find anything to suggest Natalia Edenmont worked on it, so let's take comfort in that.
And I do mean that's a comfort. If you're one of those people who don't care about body count so long as the puppy isn't in it, you're gonna have a very bad time watching this movie.
But what's the big deal with a big, stinky, dead rodent? I mean, it's Halloween and they're making a haunted house. It's ethereal. Why, when black metal bands perform, they often drag caucuses into the hall for the smell's sake. It's just set dressing. I mean, just look at how innocent this all is.
Ah! My children have been turned into fire-breathing dragons.
It's your mother, and she's in a horrible mood. A birthday cake for you.
It's a Halloween birthday party! Nothing creepy about that.
Actually, there is something to be said about how innocent this all comes across. There is a subtle sense that there is something wrong here, but it's easily dismissed as reading too deeply into the situation. Like, the issue is with you, not with what's going on. I mean, it's a family having a good, cheerful time on Halloween. What's there to find unnerving?
Did you just bite me?
Aside from the fucking kids.
No, it has to be in my head. Look, it's a beautiful autumn day and they're playing baseball in the yard. It's the picturesque dream of family parents wish for.
It'll help, hon.
What?
It'll help.
What do you mean?
It'll help.
Like, do I have to do everything around here?
Come on, picture my arm. And
Oh,
my legs.
your
I gotta
arm.
relax.
The personalities of the parents are clear from the start, with David being a more carefree, fun-loving father and Claire a more strict and mature mother. And if this was a lesser movie, this sitcom-style clash of personalities would bed for problems in their marriage, but that's not the case here at all. It's actually the fact that they're raising the devil's vermin.
I don't feel like I'm spoiling anything in saying that. Between the back of the box, the IMDb summary, and the trailer on YouTube, the kids turning out to be evil incarnate isn't exactly surprising, but the movie takes its time getting there. It really wants to build up this sense of slowly crumbling normalcy to really hammer home the payoff. Think of it like seeing Michael Myers before killing his parents, but not directed by Rob Zombie.
Oh,
Was that a rock?
You'd expect the little tykes to be giggling, playful little clowns, having the time of their lives with these two for parents, but they just seem exhausted and completely apathetic to the whole thing, like they just want it to be over. And to be honest, as someone whose mother still does the baby voice with him to this day...
Today, we're going to learn about the ancient art of raking.
Is it bad I immediately relate with anyone who wants these people dead?
My lovely assistant, Jack Poe, is raking today because he's being punished for throwing a rock at his dad's head.
Okay, yes, that's bad.
I have to say, Christopher Denham must be the one writer and director who doesn't have a personal grudge against religion. Because David is so far removed from the dull, conservative, malicious stereotype of a priest that populate horror cinema, I didn't even realize he was supposed to be a priest at first. He's actually a fully fleshed out character, and kind of charming at that.
It's Claire and I's 10th wedding anniversary. And I'm gonna go attempt a most dangerous stunt. I'm gonna go try and jump all 206 of my wife's bones.
David is played by Adrian Pastar. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his last name, so forgive me if I say Pastor. He's probably the most recognizable actor of this whole production, having been in almost 100 movies and shows since the 80s. Some of them really big, like Carlito's Way, Top Gun, and even a few Marvel projects. I still had no idea who he was until I looked him up, though, because it turns out he's the voice of Iron Man in several of the cartoons. Much as I like him, though, that ironically makes me trust him less.
But before I go, in case I don't come back, Jack, I want you to know how much I love you.
Why do you expect your kids to watch a video of you screwing their mom?
you better not have the camera in here.
The camera here is pervert.
Yeah.
Thankfully, or not, actually, they're interrupted by the dog whining, as if someone is harming it or scaring it. But the kids are sound asleep, so it can't be them. Until Claire and David wake them up, so David reads them a fairy tale to help them fall asleep. It's a story about a two-headed dragon who disguises itself as two children, so it can walk unseen among all the other kids. The kids point out all the things wrong with it, but the dragon pretends well enough to trick them, lure them outside, and eat them alive.
That was perhaps the most vastly inappropriate fairy tale I've ever heard.
Hun, it's an allegory.
It's also the movie going wink, wink, wink.
By the way, that dragon is gonna be part of the scenery for much of the film, like a big neon sign signaling the presence of evil, like a raven glaring from afar, or the distant sound of thunder, and I remember seeing that specific dragon plush everywhere when I was a kid, which makes it strangely... It doesn't feel out of place, even if it's a bit silly.
Evil on a budget. IKEA!
It turns out the camera is actually Claire's, and she's got it to make a diary discussing her work as a psychologist. Not sure who for. And this is where we get the first clue that either she's not very good at her job, or Denham just didn't write her very well.
Patient's name, Billy Tomlinson, 11. Diagnosed with prodromal VEOS at the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, where I'm currently chief resident of the child psychiatry unit.
To be fair, I did not know any of this until after I decided to check up what the hell prodromal means, because I like learning English. A prodrome is basically the symptom of sickness before the sickness breaks out. Like, say you feel like you're coming down with a cold. You know you're coming down with a cold because you remember how you felt the last time you came down with a cold. That is a prodrome. So basically what she's saying is the kid is coming down with very early onset schizophrenia, but it hasn't developed yet. All well and good. Except prodrome does not apply to mental illness. The term is pre-psychosis. I feel like a doctor would know that. Or is it like a driver's license and you forget everything as soon as your head isn't in a textbook?
Poorly researched or not, I can't help but feel Claire is a very bad psychologist, because how else do you explain her not realizing there is something seriously off with her crotch goblins?
Always wanted to use that in a sentence. Feels icky.
Either case, all of this makes for a very potent mix of emotional and psychological torment that actually is pretty novel. We have children exhibiting early signs of antisocial personality disorder, born from an acclaimed but lacking psychologist and a borderline hypocritical priest, isolated in the woods, far from emergency services or concerned neighbors, trapped with their own flawed personalities to bounce off of. It's a recipe for some pretty high-stakes, emotional and horrific events to occur, and I can't wait to see where the movie goes with it.
Did you make that?
What's wrong with that? Sardines and tomato sauce, it's a fantastic combination.
Okay, I'm joshing. Actually, that's the pet goldfish they kept in Emily and Jack's room. I just skipped over it because the scene seemed to only exist to establish these kids do indeed have access to living beings. With everything set up and ready to go ahead, the derangement of the kids truly manifests as they transition from occasional mischief to wanton destruction. Did I mention Emily has a pet toad called Nikolai?
I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from.
There is a disconnect between David and the aberrations the kids commit, where he prefers denial to confronting their more and more disturbing behavior.
Our kids don't deserve ice cream right now. They deserve a lecture from their father because what they did was wrong.
Why don't we make a movie? Spend a little more family time together.
These kids have a sign on their forehead saying, "Caution!" And what does Daddy Dearest do? He teaches them how to pick locks and how to tie unsolvable knots.
David actually wants them to kill, doesn't he?
This movie is not above cheap gimmicks like video distortion or bass tones overlaying the scary scenes. It seems to suggest there is something to the kids other than them just being insane for them to commit these acts, like they're truly personifications of evil. Explaining how they know to do the things they do is a little bit like explaining how Michael Myers knew how to drive a car or vanish in the blink of an eye. It doesn't elevate them to something inhuman, it just makes the parents seem like the most helpful victims ever. To show you what I mean...
What are you guys saying? I don't like that thing. It's like their own language.
That is creepy.
You're gonna learn about an ancient art today called lock-picking. You won't find it in the manual, but you will find it here.
That is not.
It's a weird inconsistency where I'm not sure whether to worry about the parents winding up dead or expectantly wait for it to happen. On the one hand, they don't do anything to deserve their fate, even by traditional horror movie standards. On the other, they're practically handing the kids their kitchen knives and...
What is the secret to your gluteal success?
Santa uses a Stairmaster, baby.
Nice, I like it.
Do shit like that.
Honestly, I'm more worried about the pets.
Oh, god damn it.
And if you think Claire isn't guilty of enabling the little demons as well, think again.
Never ever take more than one pill at a time. Do you understand? Otherwise your body will go into what we call a conscious coma.
What is it about these people and teaching the kids how to kill them?
New Year's Eve. After an unfair and ominous conversation where David subtly levels the blame for the kids on Claire, only for Claire to find him in bed with them covered in bite marks, several truths are revealed. It turns out David was abused as a child, and, as Claire points out, victims of abuse are more likely to abuse their own children in the future.
You don't even know your own kids are psychotic.
I'm not psychotic.
They crucified the fucking cat, okay? They put goldfish in a sandwich. They put the frog in vice grips. I saw them eating raw meat.
Obvious revolt from two abused children.
That's something the movie actually does fairly well.
With both Claire and David blaming the other for what's going on, I was left unsure about anything. Suspecting David makes the most sense, with Claire being the more sensible and grounded of the two, and we haven't seen anything to suggest she is responsible. On the other hand, David has gone out of his way not to break a hair on the children's heads, even when it was clearly warranted. Is he making that effort to cover up his guilt, or because having been abused himself, he won't allow himself to subject his own children to it? If he's innocent, blaming Claire is only sensible, and vice versa. No, she hasn't been deliberately harmful, but again, she does not seem in any way qualified to be a psychologist if hitherto now she never realized there is something wrong with her children. At the same time, there's been nothing to explain the children's behavior, but their ability to inflict pain has bordered on the supernatural. So is there some underlying force driving the events forwards, where everyone are made victims of a tragedy playing out before us?
At this point, I could not tell you one way or the other where the movie was going with this, and it was glorious to be that uncertain, to watch the characters desperately cling to explanations that clearly don't make sense to either of them. How long do you think this lasts?
Jack and Emily cornered a boy, Christian McNamara, aged 9, 1 grade below them, and began to bite him repeatedly.
The movie is an hour and 15 minutes. What do you want?
It's clear to me now that no one was biting Jack and Emily. Jack and Emily were biting each other.
Hold the fuck up. You're telling me you could not tell the difference between the bite of a child and a fully grown man? This woman is not qualified to run a daycare, never mind being a psychologist.
While David has been soundly disregarded as a cause for the children's behavior, in no way does this soothe the family's trouble. In a way, it makes things worse. Neither Claire nor David can find it in them to blame the other, and with no one to blame, they're left without reason. If there's no reason, how can they solve it? They can only return to what they both know without hope. David, even knowing exorcism is disregarded on every level of Christianity, chooses to believe a demonic force has taken root in his children. Claire, for her part, issues psychological testing in the form of Rorschach inkblot tests before putting the children on a controlled regimen of psychoactive drugs. I'd be remiss not to point out a psychologist can't actually do that, but she's also assessing her own children. I don't have trouble imagining she's not following protocol. Either one's attempt at a solution is dangerous and ridiculous in its own way, but they don't have anything else to go on.
Aside from, admitting neither one of you are capable of handling this and turning the kids over to the proper authorities. But, does seem to work.
For 2 long months, everything seems to get back to normal, perhaps even better than so. The kids haven't just given up their malicious tendencies, but they've actually started acting like children. They laugh and play, and against all odds, they've even managed to make friends with the boy they attacked.
Proving once again that there is no good child, there is no bad child. There is only diagnosis, and with a diagnosis, treatment.
Color me unconvinced.
I wasn't exactly shocked to see the children suddenly vanish when the camera was away. That's a trick they've been pulling off all movie. But at this point, the movie becomes less about not wanting to see the kids kill people, and more about seeing just how creative they can get in doing it. Short answer is, very.
Oh my Christ, I forgot about the dog!
The shocking likeness to the Lord of the Flies guards the gate to the children's playhouse, where no parents may tread. Blaspheming against the heathen idol, David walks further into their lair, sick and terrified of what he may find. The walls of the clubhouse are a morbid reflection of the twisted minds that inhabit it. Crayon drawings, dirty toys, and things found on the ground, all what you'd expect in a children's play area, but twisted in a demented way. The drawings show animals, other kids, and even their family mutilated and bleeding by the two children. In place of plush toys are rotting carcasses and small animals nailed to the wood, some of them still alive. And surveying it all, a two-headed dragon on a tapestry dividing the playhouse. What horror do they choose to reveal last?
I'm not sick. I promise I'm not. It's just that zoom in on the boy's eye in the trash bag. Was this really the time to be cinematic, David?
This is the end of the story for David and Claire Poe. Their children would be charged as minors and accused of 1 count unlawful restraint, 1 count attempted murder. Their level of malice and obvious ability to manipulate while feigning innocence goes beyond even the standard levels of adult sociopathy. Their children, their babies, are monsters through and through. David and Claire summarize this for the camera in what would be the epilogue, with Claire forced to be the one David has to depend on as he breaks apart where he sits. After all they've done, even after all he's seen, he still loves his children. He tells all of this to the camera as if begging for anyone to hear, but it's just a camera. No matter how he frames the story, no matter how he wants to tell it, there is no one listening. Because no one is going to watch it.
I'm sorry.
It's actually very emotional. But if this world made any kind of sense, they would be at a hotel, the house would be swarming with cops, and the kids would be in jail.
DCFS, against our better wishes, has given us custody of our children until the court arraignment tomorrow.
Or, to put it another way, things are about to be contrived as fuck around here, so just focus on the spectacle.
Let's have a staring contest. I dare you to stare until our movie's done. I bet you can't.
You are right, but only because the audio keeps slipping away and I have to resync it every 5 minutes. I'm pretty sure Disc Shop sent me a pirated DVD, and if they did, that's on them, not me.
So in the morning the cops will come, and whether it makes sense or not, until then Claire and David are responsible for the kids, which means they will only remain in the house for 1 more night. So naturally the parents are gonna take precautions to keep the kids under constant surveillance and restraint until...
Or they can go to bed and trust the murderous hellspawn not to recreate Home Alone while they're asleep? Is there any chance this movie is a prequel to The Collector?
Not that I could find out, but if 2 prepubescents can incapacitate 2 adults, anything is possible.
Dad, what are you doing? Stop it! Stop! Please.
I don't know whether to laugh or cry.
The adults wake up, poorly tied to the chairs of the dining room table. Each one served a bowl of tomato soup, like some wicked parody of breakfast. Despite David's instructions for the unbreakable knot, Claire easily slips out of her bonds, finding the power is out and the phone cut. They're effectively trapped with the ominous duo. They surprise her on the staircase, stabbing her in the arm, shocking her at their audacity. Even still, she can't bring herself to believe what the children are capable of. But for just the briefest moment, she remembers she's a fucking adult.
Amazing, wasn't it? It's almost as if the very idea of a fully grown adult being overpowered by a carpet crawler is ridiculous.
But these aren't her children. Claire tells them as much, and she promises if they move, she's gonna break every fucking bone in their bodies. While the camera was off, Claire managed to untie David and guard the little goblins while he prepares to get them out of the house. because these creatures will not remain here for 1 minute longer. Suddenly there is a loud crash as David collapses on the stairs. Terrified but arrogant, Claire dares leave the children alone to find her husband out cold, and when she comes back, they haven't moved an inch. Almost as if they know they don't need to.
Fucking drugged us!
More importantly, did you eat the food they put out for you?
Realizing she is about to lose consciousness and be entirely at the mercy of the diminutive psychopaths, she does exactly what she promised and beat them into mincemeat with the bat before or she runs into the forest, giving the drugs ample time to work while all the kids have to do is follow her from a distance. That works too. While I think how we ended up here is a pit of poop 15 fathoms deep and 30 miles wide, I have to admit there is a district of my sick and shriveled heart that lights up at this scene. I do love a well-done sense of hopelessness and despair in the face of inevitability, and seeing Claire meekly struggling against the effects of the drugs as the children have a gentle stroll through the woods, filming her weakening body failing her vicious need to survive, is a genuine treat to behold. It's every slasher villain's slow shamble after their fleeing victim, only for one time's sake it actually makes sense. The final cherry on top is when Claire, at the very last ebbs of her strength, manages to crawl to the road just as the ice cream truck drives by, weakly beg for the driver to stop, only to finally fail and slide into unconsciousness before the car drives off and abandons her to the children's depravity.
And then it cuts before we see what happens to them, but I think the image is telling enough. I mean, the police was supposed to pick up the little kids in the morning, but seeing the parents laid out like Christmas dinner before the urchins, it's telling enough. And in my opinion...
Well, let me get this straight. You think that killing those guys is funny?
I do. And I'm tired of pretending it's not.
What can I say? For as gritty and real as the film was trying to be, the more I think about it, the sillier it gets. I think if you imagine what kids going psycho would be like, the film does a good job portraying exactly that, but it's not a realistic matter of lowered impulse control and inhibitions so much as an American slasher-style house of horrors. If you suffer from pedophobia, don't watch this movie because it will trigger every nightmare in the book, but come on, that's like saying you shouldn't watch It because you're afraid of clowns. Initially, I was pretty unsettled, despite the moments where the movie decided to wink at the audience. Jack throwing a stone at his father and Emily squashing a frog in a vise, I wouldn't go so far as to say that's healthy behavior for children, but I've seen kids chase after voles and stomp them because they thought it was a game, and a real bastard I went to school with back in 3rd grade once bragged to me about how he'd found a dozen frogs at a creek, poured gasoline over them and set them on fire. So I can believe those first small cruelties, but as the kids went through their pets one by one in a very logical, progressive manner, while staying stone silent and becoming more and more theatrical, I began to realize maybe I shouldn't be taking this so seriously. It stopped feeling like a documentation of murderous tendencies and more like Denim was flagging a white sheet in front of my face going, "Ooh, be creeped out." Going from unsettled to that felt disappointing in a lot of ways, but if I stop expecting it to be harrowing and instead thrilling, it does make a lot more sense as a movie. Like I said, I can imagine kids being sadistic and cruel, and it did hold my attention as they tested the waters for what they could get away with and become little wannabe horror icons. Issue is when you do that, it actually becomes kind of boring as you wait for something to happen because it's so gradual. So it works better as a thriller than a scary movie, but it's still got some issues. And speaking of boring, I'm sorry to say the kids are pretty boring. They have the personality of Michael Myers, which I know will make some people salivate, but unlike Michael Myers, they don't come across as an unstoppable force for evil, just a pathetic little tykes looking sad you took away their iPad. What makes them so deadly is that even when it occurs to David and Claire how dangerous they don't take the threat seriously. They essentially allow the kids to kill them. A significant part of the film is spent with the parents actually showing the kids the means to commit murder, even when they have to know the kids probably can't be trusted. Anyone with even the slightest bit of common sense wouldn't have fallen victim to these brats because 1. They care so little about being caught they don't even slightly try to cover up what they're capable of, and 2. They're fucking kids! They're about as intimidating as Chucky. I struggle opening a pickle jar when I make sandwiches in the morning and I could still chuck them out the window. The parents are best described as the humans of a kaiju movie. They get the most development and are given the most focus, and we experience the tragedy through them. Thing is, they're actually pretty interesting to follow through it all. Sure, I found them very embarrassing whenever they played with the kids, especially David, but the more I learned about them as people behind the masks of parenthood, I did actually start to empathize with the plight they were under with these little snots for kids. Again, especially David. Despite being a priest, he clearly knew how to live life and be happy. And with him being a priest and a survivor of abuse, I found Claire falsely blaming him to be more than a little tragic. Although it may just be because he too talks into a camera and expects a response. If you let yourself empathize with the characters, the horror of what they're going through actually becomes palpable pretty quickly. I can't say I know what parenthood is like, but I do know what it's like to feel like you're doing everything right and still everything goes wrong. Claire and David, they're flawed people with good intentions who don't deserve what their little bastard kids do to them. Not to mention the heartbreak of seeing what they are and refusing to believe it. I mean, you don't want to believe your family are monsters, and I imagine as a parent you can't believe your kids actually want to harm you. So to not only experience that, but seeing how monstrous Jack and Emily are, is horrifying. I just don't think they really embody the identity. It's difficult to explain, but there is a difference between putting on a mask and becoming the character. Step by step they got the appearance of a classic slasher villain's inhuman and unreasonable evil down, but it feels like an act on their part. And therein lies the comedy. These are some very heavy and serious themes for any movie to tackle, and how? Well, the parents, one an esteemed psychologist with a doctorate and the other a priest whose job it is to empathize, advise and talk to people daily, both capable, intelligent adults with a larger than average involvement in their kids' lives, pretend as if it's raining when the kids torture and kill their pets. Yeah, their mood is somber for a bit, but then it's right back to happy-go-lucky family fun time. Oh, and I know what's a sensible thing to do when you catch your kids killing your family pets. Let's teach them how to pick locks, tie knots, and drug people, you know, just in case they ever need it. I'm sorry, I have to ask, did they mean to make me laugh or scream? Home Movie is a cluttered, unbalanced, initially frightening but unintentionally hilarious mess of a film. On that initial viewing, when I expected all the dead animals and build-up to lead to something genuinely unpleasant, I felt bored and confused by the end of it. But watching it again and seeing all the nonsense played out deadpan serious in front of me, I had a whale of a time just laughing my ass off at how backbreakingly idiotic the whole thing is. Do I recommend Home Movie? Absolutely. Will you have a great time watching it? I dare not say, because I'm weird. Is it a good movie? Not really. But all of the bits that matter did come together to form a pretty memorable experience with a bit of everything. Just none of it put together very well. I sentence Home Movie to a 7 on a scale of 11.
I mean, sure, I did enjoy it, but only because it kept messing up every attempt at tragedy and I kept having to laugh at it. Thank you all for watching. I have been Cool Scratches, and I hope you will see me again next time to take another look at what I found.